Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. I just came across this talk. This is a BYU devotional. It's called A Sense of Prophetic Urgency. So, of course, that caught my attention. It's by C. Shane Reese, president of Brigham Young University. And we have our next Second Coming quote. And this is from January 13th. So I've added it to my spreadsheet for Second Coming quotes. And so now, for the month of January, I have a total of 7 Second Coming quotes. And like I've said in a couple other videos, it blows the previous years away. The years that I have on here, I've been basically collecting these quotes in earnest since 2024, maybe even back to 2023, but we have not seen a January like this one in 2026. So I don't think we need to worry about Second Coming talk going away. Okay, so what did he say? This new year and this new semester offers you and me an opportunity to renew our faith in Jesus Christ, to hope for good things to come. This is actually kind of a theme in this talk, which is exciting. To hope for good things to come, and to make plans to become the person God needs each of us to become. It's okay to feel a bit of divine discontent and some holy hastening in our efforts to become Christ's disciples. Again, I'll remind you, whenever we're talking about the hastening of the work, we're talking about the second coming. We're hastening to be ready for the second coming. He has a section here called Two Mighty Prophets, Seers, and Revelators, which that obviously caught my eye. I don't think he's making a statement necessarily about the prophecy of the two witnesses, but I'm very flexible when it comes to that prophecy and all prophecies. There is something interesting to note with this. So he says, today I'd like to share just a few lessons and teachings from the lives of two mighty prophets, seers, and revelators who have shaped, influenced, and inspired this campus for the past 50 years. President Jeffrey R. Holland and President Dallin H. Oaks, our beloved prophet and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Okay, President Holland and President Oaks, of course, were back-to-back presidents of Brigham Young University from 1971 to 1989. Now, really quick, in previous videos, I've talked about how I felt like something has been going on with President Nelson, President Oaks, and President Holland. And I can't cover all the reasons why. In the case of President Nelson, all his focus on the second coming, and then him living to be the oldest apostle or president of the church in this dispensation, which brought a lot of attention. The fact that President Nelson and President Oaks came into the apostleship together under unusual circumstances. They filled the vacancies of two apostles that died exactly 1 year apart on January 11th of 1983 and 1984. The symbolism between the two of them, the heart surgeon and the judge. And then with President Jeffrey R. Holland, his special relationship with the Jews and Israel. And I decided to pull up this Wikipedia article that has a list of BYU presidents. And indeed, you had President Oaks from 1971 to 1980, and then President Holland from 1980 to 1989. And when we're thinking about the two witnesses, again, I'm not saying that this is fulfillment of that, but it is interesting to note that these are the two presidents of BYU when the BYU Jerusalem Center was announced and under construction and dedicated. It says here, plans to build a center for students were announced by church president Spencer W. Kimball in 1979. So in other words, during President Oaks' time as president of BYU. He was president of BYU when this was announced. By 1984, the LDS Church had obtained a 49-year lease on the land and had begun construction. The center opened to students in May 1988 and was dedicated by Howard W. Hunter of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, which of course he later became president of the church, on May 16th, 1989. So the whole process of the BYU Jerusalem Center, which I believe could be a temple of Jerusalem, just like how the New Jerusalem will have 25 temples, maybe even more, I would think that Jerusalem could have multiple temples. So, I don't know. There's this interesting thing. It's almost like these two going together, just like how President Nelson and President Oaks came together into the apostleship. Yeah, these two, one right after another. And I'll also remind you what just happened recently between the death dates of President Nelson and President Holland. There was something that happened exactly in the middle of those two death dates on the night of November 11th and the morning of November 12th. We had a third Aurora event where the Aurora was seen all across the United States, as far south as Florida, Texas, Arizona, etc. And I got these amazing pictures at the temple lot. I don't know what it means, but it's highly unlikely it would happen exactly between their death dates. And I still feel like something really special is going on. So back to the talk. Let's go ahead and go down. Okay, this section is called President Jeffrey R. Holland. President Holland spent weeks in a coma after the passing of Sister Holland. During that time, he had a spiritual, even sacred experience and awoke with a remarkable sense of prophetic urgency. So again, this is the name of the talk, a sense of prophetic urgency. And what do you think the urgency is about? Well, let's see. President Holland recounted, virtually all my experience in the hospital during that first period is lost to my memory. What is not lost is my memory of a journey outside the hospital, out to what seemed the edge of eternity. I cannot speak fully of that experience here, but I can say that part of what I received was an admonition to return to my ministry with more urgency, more consecration, more focus on the Savior, more faith in His Word. And by the way, in that talk, he also said later on, I bear witness that when Christ comes, He needs to recognize us, not as nominal members on a faded baptismal record, but as thoroughly committed, faithfully believing, covenant-keeping disciples. This is an urgent matter for all of us, lest we ever hear with devastating regret, I never knew you. Or, as Joseph Smith translated that phrase, you never knew me. So he references the second coming in that talk where he told this story of his near-death experience. And then back to this talk, in another setting, President Holland elaborated on that experience. Now, this is just part of what he said. That's highlighted in purple. So we're going to go to my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z. This is currently row 299 for Jeffrey R. Holland's hospitalization and aftermath. This comes from a Church News article, March 9th, 2025. President Holland expresses gratitude for covenants, priesthood power. Elder Neil L. Anderson. President, you have taught our quorum a lot about prayer. Even all of us who pray very, very much and constantly, what would you teach us about prayer today? President Holland, in our last general conference, I spoke about prayer. I had had a near-death experience. For 4 weeks, I was somewhere with a foot in another world. And the 2 lessons that I was given there, and in effect, told to take back to the church. And now I speak as much more to adults than the children. And those 2 lessons were, pray more than you pray. And I thought I prayed all the time, more or less. But the lesson was, pray more than you pray. However much you've prayed, pray more. And in however many places you've prayed, pray in more places. However many times during the day you pray more times in the day. And it started to give meaning to me, an overwhelming meaning to me, that there really was significance. There really was meaning. It was quite literal when God had said, pray always. Pray always. And I thought that meant just kind of be serious about it. Well, it is to be serious about it and a lot more. Now, here's the key part right here. I took that to be part of this hastening, the hastening of the work, the hastening of family history, and every other aspect of our missionary work and all else. All right. And then I'll just end it there. So his talk is all about hastening, and it's hastening and being ready for the second coming. It's doing the work that needs to be done before the second coming. And then he says, when good things are on the horizon, you can't help but to hasten them along. President Holland and President Oaks have taught us time and time again that with Christ, good things are ahead. They sure are, you guys. Of course, we're thinking about the second coming in this video. This is the second coming channel, but it's also in your personal life. So we're going to get back to the second coming toward the end of the video. I wanted to share this because this story that he's about to tell comes at a really important time for me. I don't think it was coincidence that I came across this story. It's given me a lot of comfort. Okay, he says, on a rainy day on our campus, President Holland, then BYU's 9th president, saw a student caught in the downpour. The student's name was Matt. President Holland rolled down his car window and beckoned Matt to come over. Sister Holland was in the car as well, and the Hollands offered Matt a ride home. Unbeknownst to the Hollands, Matt was uncertain about his future and didn't know if he could, quote unquote, make it. But as they drove Matt to his apartment in the very same complex where President and Sister Holland had themselves once lived, he opened up about his worries, and they assured Matt he could and he would make it. Matt, part of your problem is that you don't believe, President Holland finally put it bluntly. Oh, I'm not talking about your testimony, he went on. Rather, you just believe that God will work his mighty miracles for everyone but you. And then President Holland underscored the point. You gotta believe, Matt. You gotta believe. Elder Matthew O. Richardson would go on to serve as BYU's advancement vice president, as a mission leader, together with his wife, Lisa, as a member of the Sunday School General Presidency, and now as an Area 70. Elder Richardson teaches on our faculty as a professor of church history and doctrine. You just gotta believe. That was the same admonition President Holland received on a summer day in August 1963, also on BYU's campus. He arrived in Provo, in his own words, with a new family, new life, new education, but no money and no confidence. Do you think that we can do it? He asked his wife, Pat. Do you think we can compete with all these people in all these buildings who know so much more than we do and are so able? Do you think we've made a mistake? Do you think we should withdraw and go home? She grabbed me by the lapels, President Holland recounted, and then Pat fiercely declared, we are not going back. We are not going home. The future holds everything for us. 36 years later, as President Holland reflected in General Conference on the trials of an earlier time, he offered this fervent counsel to his younger self. And I say, by extension, to each of us here today, don't give up, boy. Don't you quit. You keep walking. You keep trying. There is help and happiness ahead. A lot of it. 30 years of it now. And still counting. You keep your chin up. You'll be all right in the end. Trust God and believe in good things to come. In that message and throughout his remarkable ministry, President Holland testified of the Savior in his merciful role as, quote, as our, quote, high priest of good things to come. So I found that very comforting. I was going to read this from about President Holland, but I don't want this video to go too long. but it touches on the same subject. Believe in good things to come, even when things seem bleak. He talked about President Holland or President Oak's mother after his father passed away, and how she was trying to go to school to get a master's degree, and she was just being strained. She was very stressed, and she reached the breaking point and had a nervous breakdown. But then it says, with faith and priesthood blessings and the loving support of her family, she was able to get back up on the horse. And then there's something I didn't know about President Holland. You can pause and read this, but he had a really rough third and fourth grade where he wasn't doing very well academically, and he was basically publicly humiliated. Kids, it says here, classmates threw snowballs at me and called me stupid. But then let me read this part. Things felt like they couldn't get any lower. But Christ had other plans for this young man of promise who would someday stand out among the most respected legal minds in the world. So much so that the President of the United States seriously considered appointing him to the U.S. Supreme Court, which I didn't know that. That is fascinating. So we have somebody as president of the church that could have been a U.S. Supreme Court justice. I knew that he was on the Utah Supreme Court, which is already pretty impressive, but I did not know he was considered for the U.S. Supreme Court. And if it wasn't the plan for him to become the prophet, I'm sure he probably would have, but the Lord needed him probably for right now. And maybe he's already done a lot as an apostle and being a member of the first presidency, but now he's president of the church. So I'm willing to bet that the need for him to be prophet, and with his knowledge of the law, it's probably mostly been reserved for right now in the years ahead. So interesting. Okay, and then let's go to the end. President Oaks is God's prophet. In a masterful general conference message entitled The Challenge to Become, President Oaks invited all of us with a sense of prophetic urgency, so there it is again, to become. In contrast to the institutions of the world, which teach us to know something, the gospel of Jesus Christ challenges us to become something. End quote. I pray that you will make the very most of your time at Brigham Young University, become something, become a disciple. Which brings us back to what President Holland said. I bear witness that when Christ comes, he needs to recognize us, not as nominal members listed on a faded baptismal record, but as thoroughly committed, faithfully believing, covenant-keeping disciples. This is an urgent matter for all of us. Lest we ever hear with devastating regret, I never knew you, or as Joseph Smith translated that phrase, you never knew me. So, you guys, let's go back to the Second Coming spreadsheet. 7 in January that I know of. There might be more that I missed. I can't necessarily comb through every single social media post or BYU, Ensign College, BYU Hawaii, BYU Idaho talk. But I feel like there's enough to say that there is still significant and maybe even more interest in the Second Coming, and they're really trying to put that out there. So it has not diminished because President Nelson passed away, which is not surprising because this is the Lord's church. Yes, President Oaks is different, and he's going to make some different decisions. One decision that he made that's different than President Nelson is how to announce temples. That may have been something that was left to his judgment, but for all we know, it may have also been inspired, or he may have been directed to do that. But certainly the big things like preparing for the second coming, the Lord's going to direct his prophet, and it seems like that's still the plan, that we're in this what seems like a final phase. The way that President Eyring put it, let's go back to, where is it? October 16th, 2025, just 2 days after President Oaks became president of the church. He said that this is the final preparation of the Lord's church for his coming. The final preparation, in that President Oaks is the perfect one to do the things that I know the Lord will want done. We are living in exciting times. I got a picture of the aurora from the temple lot. I know it could be seen throughout the country. As far as I know, these are the only pictures that exist of the aurora as viewed from the temple lot, which makes me really happy. I'm very grateful I was able to see this for myself and then get these pictures. But on top of that, right in the middle of the death dates of President Nelson and President Holland. So interesting. Don't know what it means, but I'm paying attention, and I do think that good things are coming. All right, that's going to be for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.